Zen Intergalactic Ninja is a later game released by Konami. It starred, well, Zen, who was from a line of comic books. Now, I had a few of them growing up, and I always picked up any issue with him on it, because honestly, he looks like a bona fide badass. But for a young me, that was only these two comics amongst the many that I frequently read. I did read them for review purposes, and as little as I knew about Zen, I didn't really feel lost while I was reading them. I mainly went over to them to see where the message from the game came from, because I didn't notice it was very prevalent in anything else but the game. The only thing I really remember Zen doing was kicking a lot of ass and just making a ton of puns like they were going out of style. Now, although, it had a little jokey side to it, Zen was still a pretty serious comic. Now before I jump into too much here, guys, we're just gonna get into the review, and we're gonna talk about this game. As I said, there is a big environmental message to be forced on you when playing this game. The short of it is, Zen is an alien raised in a test tube as an experiment. He was scheduled for termination, but was ultimately saved. He has come to Earth to put garbage back in its place and fight Lord Contaminous, who controls all the forces that are polluting the Earth. Intergalactic Ninja is a mutation unlike any other NES title. It takes a few different game styles and kind of melds them into an adventure that only Konami can conceive. Upon pressing the start button, we come to a stage select screen with 4 options on where to go. There is no real advantage to beating these stages in any particular order. Since each of these stages are very different, I feel this review will be a semi-breakdown of these 4 stages and how things will play out. The first stage I took on was the Acidic Forest, which is an all side-scrolling platformer. The flowers here are being wilted by acid rain, and it's up to Zen to tap each of the flowers with his photon stick. When all the flowers are dried up, Zen starts to take damage over time. Once a few flowers are revived, we bounce back to the top of the large trees to take out the smelly Sulfura. So, I would really consider this stage primarily just a boss fight with like a small objective. Although small, all of this together makes for a very fast-paced level. The next area in need of cleansing was the offshore oil rig. Someone set fire to an oil slick, and we need to frantically run around in search of fire extinguishers to save all the workers from being burned to death. This stage was hard as hell. It seemed that you needed to put out certain fires in like an order for like the extinguishers because they were limited, and it took me a few tries to figure things out, and then I started to notice that certain enemies would actually drop the fire extinguishers when they were defeated. I felt like such a friggin' fool, so take this tip into consideration. Once everyone is rescued, it's a race to the top of the rig to take on, well, his name is Oil Slick, so I guess Oil Slick set fire to an oil slick without setting himself on fire, however that works. This fight was a little tough at first, but once you learn to grab and throw enemies with the photon stick, this game is a complete pushover, and honestly, you're really going to want to use that move pretty much on anything in the game. Just grab them with the stick and throw them. Grab them and throw them. Grab them and throw them. Upon finishing 2 stages in the game, you'll be thrown into another boss fight. This time, Jeremy has been kidnapped by Lord Contaminous himself, and he's in the need of rescuing. With his ninja-like abilities, Zen needs to scale the buildings to get to the top and fight off Contaminous before moving on to the next stage. And honestly, this is probably one of the coolest fights in the game. For some reason, you just never saw anything like this on the NES. It's just so fast, everything runs beautifully. The feel you get when you're doing this part is just very satisfying. You could say you are one with the game. Now this is where the game mixes it up even more. It's time for a high-speed chase through the caves on a minecart. This stage likes to switch it back and forth between isometric and a side-scrolling perspective. Speaking of switches, there are a few we need to hit along the way to change the tracks. If you don't hit them, you'll more than likely be led right into a bottomless pit, and this stage is littered with them.
You'll need your mental powers to remember some parts.
All the isometric parts here will have you doing a ton of platform jumping and avoiding rocks, while the side-scrolling parts are reserved strictly for fighting off enemies that try to take you off the track. Notably, there is one more isometric segment that is very reminiscent of all the hair-raising and nerve-wracking jumps of the turbo tunnels from Battletoads. It's not very long, but it's long enough.
The boss for this stage is the connoisseur of trash.
Aptly named Garbage Man. He's a pain if you don't have any of the life tokens on hand. He clutters up the screen with rubbish and tries to nab you from underground. There is a ton going on here, and it's a lot to focus on, so don't worry about the patterns, just get in there and whoop his ass. The final area that we will move into is the industrial factory. It's being occupied by Smogger, and he's using it to spew noxious gas into the air. Zen's aim is to blow this factory to the ground. Go environmental activism! Yeah! Once the bombs are set, we race against the clock to escape this isometric platforming stage. If there is anything I can say, it's to do this stage last. It's very tough to start the game off with, and if you complete all the other stages available to choose from, it will give you a greater understanding of how the game plays. They really throw the book at you here. There are several environmental hazards right alongside of the enemies. The worst part of this stage is the crane that appears out of nowhere. It comes down to a race against the crane and the clock here, so practice makes perfect. As for the boss Smogger, he can be a bit annoying. Just make sure you have a life token available. Grab him, throw him around, grab him, throw him around, grab him a little bit more, and swing away. Finishing the 4 stages will lunge you into a perilous cavern. This stage kinda plays out like a shmup or a shoot 'em up, whatever the hell you guys wanna fucking call it. While you're falling, you have to whack baddies with your stick and avoid platforms. Moving with a sense of urgency here will keep you alive, as the ceiling is also moving towards you, attempting to flatten Zen. There is a little heads-up display on the left side of the screen showing you the gap between you, the goal, and the spiked ceiling of death trying to come down on you. Like a good part of the game, the next 4 stages are straight up boss fights, so I'm not going to go into crazy detail with them. We take on some thing. I don't know what the hell to call it, but it's probably the most annoying thing in this game. He moves around under the water, launches frogs at you from his mouth, and he spits at you for another attack. Much like another game I just reviewed. Another isometric boss fight we have. This is the easiest part of the whole entire game. You just storm through and leave the garbage in a heap of scraps on the floor from whence it came. Closing in on the final stage, we move in to the mouth of the beast. Now, remember when I said learn to throw enemies with your photon stick? Well, it's about to really become handy. We have to face off against a clone of Zen. The only problem with this guy is when you get his health down to a certain point, he starts to run away, he jumps back into the containment thing, and he basically gets all his health back. It's in one of those moments you need to grab him and kind of throw him away from the machine over and over and over until he's dead. It's final boss time! Lord Contaminous sits atop his throne, spewing fire from his mouth in all directions, while taking shits on Zen when he gets pooped out. Once this form is finished, Zen and Lord Contaminous take off in a sort of Dragon Ball Z animation. After that, there is a battle in space between the two, and there's a nice little concept put into play here. Contaminous is hurling rocks towards the Earth trying to destroy it. If you don't stop him or destroy all the boulders before the counter reaches 100%, the game will end. But thankfully that didn't happen to me. I laid the smackdown and saved Earth. Bam! Galactic Ninja stands as a testament to the understanding they had while developing on the system. Now Konami, as we know, made some really great games. If you guys have checked it out, there's the whole Konami NES years retrospective where me and a bunch of people literally covered every single Konami game that was made by them for the NES. Now, the whole point of that was to kind of get to the point of this game because this is like the culmination of everything they did. The game just runs so perfectly. It looks beautiful. The music is like fantastic. Some of the best for the NES, and it's second best to none. Well, that's a lie, but there's some really good music out there. But Zen just stands so high on that table. It's not even funny. And you don't really hear a lot of people talk about this game for some reason. It's probably for the high price that the game goes for, about $60 to $70, which is a little ridiculous for an NES game. But I highly suggest playing this, emulating it, finding it, buying it, whatever. Somehow play Zen Intergalactic Ninja for the Nintendo. You guys deserve it for yourselves, and you owe it to yourselves. I'm Rewind Mike, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.